on this. Good morning, Western Montana. I almost forgot what day it was. It's Tuesday, right? Yeah, it is Tuesday. Well, I just wanted to pop in for a quick little YouTube live, go through our current storm system. We've got a cold front sliding through the region. This helped to spark off showers and thunderstorms in northwest Montana this morning. Actually had a pretty good lightning display on our Kalispell camera before the morning show started at 5. So I bet quite a few people in the Flathead Valley were awoken by either the bright light of the lightning or even some rumbles of thunder with the strong winds that were in place. So we're going to get started with this here in just a moment. I'm going to make sure everything's working here behind the scenes. If you can give me about 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and we'll get started with this. But in the meantime, what I will do is show you those current conditions across western Montana. And as you can see, there's a lot of cloud cover this morning. No surprise with that cold front sliding through. Much cooler temperatures as well. I'll use Dillon as an example. We had a little bit of sunshine earlier this morning, but it does look like for the most part those clouds are starting to fill in. I think that'll continue to be the trend for more areas as we get into the rest of the morning, but especially into this afternoon. So as you're tuning in, certainly let us know where you're tuning in from. If you have any questions or comments about the forecast for today, certainly let us know, and I'll answer those. I'll keep a close eye on the chat section and answer those as we go throughout this update. So I think everything's working here behind the scenes. Just doing one last thing, and then we'll fully get started in this update. Here we go. There it is. All right, perfect. And spin this back around and I'll say, let's get this fully underway. So again, if you're just tuning in, thank you for joining in for this morning. What I'm going to show you first is essentially the driver for this storm system that's coming in. Again, we helped bring the strong winds in northwest Montana, that cold front, and these much cooler temperatures, but also led to some of those power outages we saw into Flathead and Lake counties this morning. You see this spin. That little low pressure system is diving to the south, and ahead of it, that's what's bringing that cold front in. A little bit of an unusual pattern as well. We're seeing this cold front diving in from Canada. This is something we would normally start to see in the fall or in the early spring and in the wintertime. So a bit of an odd pattern for this time of the year, and what that's, again, helping us to contend with is the soggy conditions, the windy conditions, and the much cooler temperatures. So looking at those right now, 50s and 60s are common. I think for a lot of areas, we may not get much warmer than what we are already. A few areas, I think southwest Montana, especially down towards Dillon, we may see those temperatures creep up into the 60s. But I think 50s and 60s are going to be pretty common this afternoon outside of places like West Yellowstone, Lima, even down towards Salmon, Idaho. But right now, 52 in Kalispell, 55 Butte, 59 in Dillon, and 65 over in Missoula. Now, I am going to flip the camera to the... This is going to show Dillon, but I'm going to flip it to our Polson camera because it's been our most interesting camera all morning, kind of showing the types of conditions that we're seeing outside. If you can see these the white caps on the water, earlier in the day we were seeing this camera shake really hard, and that was with wind gusts upwards to about 30 to nearly 40 miles per hour. You can still see it shaking a little bit. It's just not quite as, I'll say, forceful as what we were seeing out there earlier in the day. I think we'll continue to see that chance for pretty choppy conditions, and honestly, I don't think it's going to be a very good day to be out on the lake, whether it be Flathead Lake, Swan Lake, Whitefish Lake up in northwest Montana, bringing it down towards Georgetown Lake, Clark Canyon Reservoir into southwest Montana. Really, again, not a good day to be out. So I did see the question from Jen Helena. Let me pop up one thing. I'll get to a different graphic, and we'll take a look at what currently is expected, but then I'll show you what we can expect as we get into this afternoon as well. I just got to grab a graphic that I didn't have quite ready. Here we go. So Helena, right now we're in the 50s. I figured it would be pretty close to that, pretty consistent on those temperatures. So 56 there in Helena. A lot of northern, really most of the state is in the 50s. The coolest temperatures up across northwest and north central Montana. And as for those winds, I'm going to pull up the current winds we're seeing right now, because I have a different graphic that'll show me more of the area. So sustained right now, about 10 to 20 miles per hour in a lot of areas. Maybe we'll go 5 to 15 miles per hour for west central southwestern Montana, excluding Livingston. But you see that gust upwards to about 28 miles per hour. We've been in that range of 25 to 35 for much of this morning, though earlier, I say earlier, it was late last night, we did have a few gusts up here in northwest Montana, closer to that 40 to 45 mile per hour range. Right now, coming back to Helena, we're at about 7 miles per hour, but I would be surprised if we didn't see those winds kick up later, upwards to about 20 to 35 miles per hour. Maybe a few areas get some slightly stronger gusts. So, jumping back into radar and what we're seeing out there right now, this has been the case all morning. Most of our moisture is north of Interstate 90. I'll add along here in west central Montana, but most of this has stayed north of I-90, and at least for the next little bit, I think that's going to continue to be the case. We'll zoom in here a little bit closer, show you where some of our heaviest activity is, and it's right now in this band that has been pretty consistently in this spot for about the last 2 hours. From down here, Superior, back down towards Alberton, across the mountains up into areas near Dixon, Ravalli, St. Ignatius, and then across the Sealy Swan Valley, closer to the Condon area as it moves off to the north and east, and then more spotty activity all across northwest Montana, so Polson over towards Kyla, Kalispell, Libby, Troy, up into Eureka, Rexford, as well as for Stryker and Olney. But as we get into Glacier National Park, that's one area we've seen a fair bit of moisture this morning. We've seen some pretty heavy rainfall overnight, but also we're going to continue to see that over the next little bit as well. I think we'll see another round of moisture from this batch move in, but you notice the blues showing up into those highest elevations. We have been contending with a little bit of light snow up there. It's just been mixing in with the rain, but really for areas above 8,000 feet or so, I think the snow chances at this point are pretty much going down. The moisture will be slowly starting to clear out of northwest Montana as we go throughout the rest of the day, with the heaviest activity likely transitioning further into southwestern Montana. Oh, you're so welcome, Jen. I'm glad to help out and give a little update for Helena as well. So appreciate it. Again, thank you everyone for tuning in this morning. Looking a little wider in the state, you can see the heaviest rainfall now over north central and central Montana. That'll continue to be, I think, the heaviest rainfall for this morning, and we'll get in a future tracker here in a minute. There's a reason why I say that's probably going to change and transition down here into parts of southwest Montana. But overall, we're going to still be looking at those spotty showers and thunderstorms this afternoon. 62 for that high in Kalispell, 67 Missoula, 61 Butte, 71 in Bozeman. I think these temperatures, especially Kalispell, maybe even Missoula, we may be approaching our high temperatures already on the day, so we may not even get to some of those, or some of those may have already occurred. Further south, you can see there's a big shift in those temperatures once you get into really areas right along the state line. 75 in West Yellowstone, 91 still that forecast over in Salmon, Idaho. But that's what's going to help to drive some of the thunderstorms that develop in southwest Montana later on today. So far, since midnight, the strongest wind gusts we've seen have, at least in our area of western Montana, have been between 20 and, say, 35 miles per hour. Kalispell there at 36. Higher elevations have seen some stronger gusts closer to that 40 to 45 mile per hour range. But I think, at least for the most part, the strongest of the winds are likely behind us. That said, the winds could still be strong enough to bring some tree limbs down, cause some sporadic power outages. So don't let your guard down, but I think overall we will start to see some conditions improve, especially in northwest Montana later on in the day. That said, we still do have the wind advisory that remains in effect for really areas along the divide and in northwest Montana. The lower Clark Fork region, Missoula and Bitterroot Valleys, and the Bitterroot and Sapphire Mountains, this is actually a brand new update from last I saw, have been dropped from the wind advisory. So the winds are not forecasted, I guess, at this point to get quite as strong. I would still say 20 to 30 mile per hour wind gusts will remain possible in these areas closer to Interstate 90, the US 93 corridor from Missoula and south. Now, as for those other ones, let me get the latest information because I want to make sure we're still on track now that these particular advisories have been dropped. So going into starting off with the Potomac-Seeley Lake region, roughly in this zone, we're still looking at those winds sustained 10 to 25 miles per hour, gusting as high as 45 miles per hour. That advisory remains in effect until 8 p.m. The Kootenai Cabinet region and the West Glacier region, so this zone roughly in here, 15 to 30 mile per hour sustained winds gust up to 45. That will be in effect until 2 p.m. before it's allowed to expire. Flathead and Mission Valley, that will be running until 2 p.m. as well. So this zone, once we get to 2 o'clock this afternoon, we'll see those be allowed to expire. These further south for the Potomac-Seeley Lake region and the Butte-Blackfoot region are going to be until 8 p.m. So one note on these, the maximum wind speed, at least as was forecasted yesterday, has been allowed to at least be a little bit lower for the rest of the afternoon. Not surprised by that. It really did look like that 10 p.m. to about 2 a.m. time period would have those strongest winds, 50 to 55. The peak, or at least the cap on that, is around 45 miles per hour now. So that's one thing that's going to help us out as we go throughout the rest of the day. But again, the areas along the divide across west central and into southwestern Montana, those will be running until 8 p.m. tonight. So there's the update on our winds. Now let's get into Future Tracker. It's done a good job picking up on the focus of the moisture north of Interstate 90, and that's going to continue to be the case again up until about lunchtime. I think that's when things will start to change. We may see some of these showers, that one main band we were talking about, from about Alberton over to St. Ignatius and into the Seeley Swan Valley. This may try and drift south into the Missoula Valley. Right now, I think we may be hard-pressed to get much in the way of measurable precipitation from Missoula south into the Bitterroot Valley, and maybe even as far as places like Phillipsburg, Butte, Deer Lodge, Drummond. Just on the way that this storm is setting up, we're essentially getting the dry slot out of this storm system. Northwest, southwest Montana, a little bit better. So this is the newest model run. This will be my first time actually seeing it as well. So heaviest rainfall through about midday will stay up across northwest and north central Montana. And this is tracking even further south. So even places like Dillon may not even see very much in the way of rainfall either. So really this zone from about Interstate 90 down to Interstate 15, all the way up until you get to about Lima, this whole zone may stay pretty dry for this storm system. But you see those thunderstorms developing down here closer to Lima, I believe that's Spencer, Idaho, and then across through Red Rock Lakes National Wildlife Refuge, West Yellowstone, and maybe as far north as Big Sky. But you see how even Bozeman really misses out on a lot of the moisture based on just this one model run. And I'm going to put a big asterisk, big caveat on this. This is only one forecast model. Other ones are showing those storms developing a little bit further north. So Dillon, Ennis, Bozeman, even as far north as places like Three Forks, Whitehall. Don't let your guard down. You may not get the stronger thunderstorms today, but it is a possibility that those may lift north. More likely scenario is further south, like we're seeing down here towards the state line in West Yellowstone. But you see those thunderstorms develop and then track south. Those could produce, the winds are going to be gusty down there, 20 to 30 miles per hour anyways. Those thunderstorms could increase those winds upwards to about 30 to 50 miles per hour, and there is an isolated chance that one of these storms does reach severe criteria, which would be over 58 miles per hour. So likely a 60 mile per hour wind gust would be possible. So if you have any plans or you have friends or family down at Yellowstone National Park, give them a heads up. They may be pretty quiet right now, but later on this afternoon, again, in that 2 to probably 6 o'clock period, have them keep a close eye on the forecast, or at least keep a close eye on the weather app. I mean, here's a great reminder. You can download the NBC Montana weather app. If you get severe thunderstorms in your area, it'll alert you, even if I'm not here to alert you to those thunderstorms. So that'll be something to keep a close eye on down in far southwestern Montana. That'll be moving down into, again, Yellowstone National Park, over towards Gardner, and that'll continue to track further off to the east, heading in the direction of Red Lodge, Billings, the Beartooth Highway as well. Wouldn't surprise me if we actually see maybe a little bit of snow in the Beartooth Highway and those highest peaks up there. But you notice how, and I'll back this up just a little bit, as we go throughout the day, west to east, we begin to see the rain clear, and this one's even moving faster, maybe even by 6 to 8 o'clock this evening, outside of a few showers closer to Helena, Great Falls, Bozeman, West Yellowstone. We're pretty much dry, and this system is moving off to the east, so tracking a little more quickly than what was even models were indicating this time yesterday. But we'll continue to probably still see some showers. I would say Interstate 15 and east through the overnight period. You see Bozeman, still maybe some showers in the early morning hours, but I think by the time we get to the morning show tomorrow, which starts at 5, we're just going to be looking at cloudy skies, a few sprinkles out there, and by the afternoon, high pressure builds in, those clouds evaporate, they clear, and we're looking at a pretty nice Wednesday afternoon, and that's going to be kind of the start of a very nice end of the week. Now, as for those rainfall totals, this may be a touch overdone based on what I'm seeing, especially towards Bozeman, but you notice that real big dry slot that I was talking about from about Interstate 90 down through Butte and Dillon. This zone may miss out on, again, almost all of the rain from this storm system. Kalispell, we're on the backside of this. We could still pick up about another 1/10 of an inch or so. I think that's probably going to be our ceiling. Further east, that's where we could see those heavier rainfall amounts. Bozeman, if you happen to get underneath one of those thunderstorms, maybe 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch, more likelihood of that as you go further south down towards Big Sky, Lakeview, Red Rock Lakes National Wildlife Refuge, Hebgen Lake, and West Yellowstone, as well as over to Gardner, where we could pick up, again, maybe upwards to about 1/4 of an inch, an isolated total of up to 1/2 an inch, if you just happen to get underneath one of those stronger cells. But central and eastern Montana, some beneficial rain likely on the way out there, even though, again, out in our region, we're not quite getting as fortunate outside of northwest Montana. One thing that's going to be good, and I'm going to bring up our wildfires right now, this moisture and the cold air that's going to be associated with it, this is going to help really limit the spread of the wildfires, at least in our region, and may allow firefighters to really get a good grip or a good handle on these. I'm looking specifically towards the Green Mountain and Garnet fire. Latest update on the Green Mountain fire, and I'm going to actually back this up so you don't lose the titles in the clouds. The Green Mountain fire, it was reduced from 22 acres down to 16 acres. I believe it's at 20% contained. The Garnet fire is still upwards to about 122 acres from what I last saw. That might not be correct either. That may actually be down a little bit as well, as they've gotten better aerial imagery of it. So I'm seeing it's different places, 124, 94. In general, we'll just say it's around 100 acres there. But I think we're going to start seeing some, maybe a little bit of containment on that fire just because of the moisture that's going to be overrunning it. It may not be a ton, but these temperatures in the 50s and 60s will certainly help. Outside of directly western Montana, these two fires continue to be our bigger problems. The Big Bear and the Rush fires. Those two together are burning around 2,500 acres. I believe the Rush fires in that 500 to 600 acre range, and the Big Bear is over 2,000 acres right now. So southwest Montana will probably continue to see smoke getting brought in from this storm system, especially as that cold front slides south, may drag this down towards places like Dillon and Lima. Salmon, Idaho, you'll probably get a decent amount of smoke out of these as well. The Thompson fire, it's still quite small, not a whole lot going on with that. I do believe we have one more smaller fire near north of Butte. It's the Rock Fire. It's only a couple of acres, so roughly in this zone. So a few smaller fires here in western Montana. The bigger concerns will be the Big Bear and Rush fires. But also, yesterday there was a fair bit of smoke right as that cold front was starting to come in to northwest Montana. So Kalispell had air quality drop down to moderate, trying to think, moderate, and then I think at one point it did get into the unhealthy for sensitive groups category. That was a lot of smoke coming in with the front edge of that front coming in from Washington, so Washington State fires. We'll probably continue to see at least that chance, especially as those temperatures warm up later this week, get a little bit more smoke into the region, and likely getting a little bit more elevated in our fire weather concerns. We do have increased fire levels for some of our areas. Missoula County and the Beaverhead Deer Lodge National Forest both went up to high yesterday. And that's, it wouldn't surprise me after we get past this little cool streak that we see more national forests, more counties start to increase those fire weather concerns upwards to up into the high category. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but with how the extended forecast is looking, and you'll see that here in a minute when we go into temperatures, you'll see what I mean. So right now, here's the storm system, that little drop or that little trough of low pressure that has dove into the region. We're going to be in zonal flow for Thursday and most of Friday, but you notice this little ridge starting to take shape. It's not going to be a massive ridge where we're going to see those temperatures climbing rapidly, but we are going to see them climb back above average. And as we approach the warmest part of the year, those high temperatures, or at least those average temperatures, are in the 80s for most areas. So looking at the next few days, today 60s and 70s are going to be common. I think a lot of areas may not actually get as warm as what's forecasted, especially towards Butte, maybe even Bozeman, Missoula. Some of those high temperatures probably have already occurred. Now for Wednesday, we'll start to see that moderating trend. 70s for most areas are going to be common, though Missoula, we may be already back up into the mid-80s for tomorrow afternoon. Thursday, the warming trend continues. We're into the 80s almost area-wide outside of West Yellowstone in the upper 70s, mid to upper 70s there. Friday, similar story. I think Friday and Saturday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are shaping up to be the hottest days of the next 7. 80s and 90s again are going to be common, though again I don't think we're talking mid and upper 90s like we have been the last couple of weeks with some of those warmer spells. Low 90s are probably going to be about the cap as things look like right now, with a weaker ridge of high pressure, but a ridge of high pressure nonetheless. 84, 86 for Kalispell, Butte, and Dillon as we get into Saturday. Sunday, we may start to see a little drop in those temperatures west of the divide. We do have another storm system that likely will be approaching. Probably doesn't arrive until Monday or Tuesday of next week. Models aren't particularly aggressive with that storm system right at the moment, but something, as always, we'll keep a very close eye on and keep you informed. So let me check. Again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask those. Again, thank you all for tuning in today. I'm just looking at the numbers with the sets right now, 17 concurrent viewers. That's about the most I think we've had on one of these. So again, thank you all for getting this update and being here. As for, again, there we go. Okay, I'm back for a brief moment. Sorry about that. It crashed and was just all of a sudden gone. So we'll wrap it up here. Let me get this tripod back up really quick. I know we lost everybody who was watching, but I'll still finish this up after that little unexpected stop there. Again, for today, showers and thunderstorms, some strong wind gusts. Wind advisories remain in effect for northwest Montana as well as areas for the Potomac Seeley Lake region and the Butte Blackfoot region. 30 to 45 mile per hour gusts will be possible. Wednesday, especially Wednesday morning, those showers and thunderstorms will be exiting. We'll transition over to a bit of a zonal northwesterly flow. This is going to lead to a pretty dry streak of weather. Overall, we're going to be looking at quieter conditions as compared to what we've seen the last 2 days. So overall, we're going to be looking at, again, much quieter conditions, those temperatures warming up into the 80s and 90s as we get later on into this week. So again, sorry about the little technical difficulty there we had for a few moments. So thanks for all of you who stuck around through all of that. But feel free to share this YouTube live once it's up. We want to get that information out to as many people across the region as we can. If you have any photos or videos of this storm system, be it the wind, the rain, maybe even some of that high elevation snow up in the Glacier National Park, feel free to share those with us at nbcmontana.com/chime in. Tune into our live broadcast at 5, 6, and 10 this evening for the latest news and weather updates. Then, of course, tune in to NBC Montana Today tomorrow morning at 5 with me and Jason Hurst. And we'll let you know what you can expect for the rest of the week and into the weekend, because it's going to be likely going to be a pretty nice weekend. Lots of events going on across the area. I know here in Missoula we've got the International Choral Festival. I know I'm going to try and check that out, at least in their little preview show at Downtown Tonight on Thursday. So looking forward to that. But also, again, it's that time of the year in western Montana. There's lots of events going on each weekend. So hopefully you're able to go out and enjoy that. I know we got a few days, but as Jason said this morning, it's never too early to start looking ahead to the weekend. Hopefully you just got to get through this one storm system. A little bit breezy today, a little bit rainy, and much cooler. But once we get beyond, say, 3, 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, we'll see the system clearing the region, and we're going to be looking at quiet days ahead. So let me check one last thing. When the system crashed, I lost track of the chat, so I want to make sure I'm not missing any questions before I completely jump off. Let me see if I can find it really quick. Okay, there it is. Nope, it is still not popping up for me. It's being difficult. What can you say about technology sometimes? It likes to make things a little bit trickier. So, anywho's, let me show one thing while I'm trying to get back to the chat. And that's just going to be radar. And what I'll do is just loop this over the last couple of hours and show you roughly how this storm system has behaved across the area. Let's get it continuously looping. There we go. All right, let's see. Waiting for the chat section to load. Again, this is sort of a secondary last call. If you have any questions, feel free to ask those. But in that case, if there isn't anything here in the next minute or so, I'll fully wrap this up. One thing of note, again, the heaviest rain is going to stay north of I-90, at least for the next little bit, and then we'll see this zone right along the state line, potentially maybe that zone roughly, where we see those heavier showers and thunderstorms with the gusty winds later on today. I am going to stop this right now. We have seen a brief intensification of a little embedded thunderstorm here north and east of St. Ignatius, north of Seeley Lake. So right over the Mission Mountains, now dropping back down into the Seeley Swan. That one itself could produce at least some briefly gusty winds. It's maybe just a hair south of Condon, but that's going to be the general location of that. But that's probably the heaviest amount of rainfall that we're seeing across the area right now. And then we still do have a little bit of that light snow up into northwest Montana, and taking us back to I'll say what's been probably one of our more exciting videos, but more interesting cameras on the day. This has been our Flathead Lake camera. Those northerly winds are really going to push the strongest wave action, the strongest winds down into south portions of the lake. See that question, Minor Bird. The how long will it last in Great Falls? So let me jump into Future Tracker really quick, and I'll show you briefly, or at least give you a rough idea of how long it's going to rain in Great Falls. I think it's going to be a pretty soggy day today. This is looking throughout. This is around lunchtime. Still looking at widespread light to moderate showers in the area. This will continue through the afternoon. The heaviest thunderstorm activity develops into southwest Montana, right on the front edge of that low pressure system and the cold front into the afternoon. But we're still looking at rain up in Great Falls as we get into the late afternoon. Maybe by this evening, we finally start to break out of the majority of the rainfall, but still showers roughly in that zone. And this is looking at 9:30, 10 o'clock this evening. So I won't say we'll be completely rain-free until, let's see, probably 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. I think that's when we'll finally see this clear out of the region. And this is going to be about the same time frame for Bozeman as well. Helena involved in that same timing. So I think between, say, 3 and 6 o'clock, most of this moisture finally gets out of the area and then pushes off towards Billings and Miles City. As we get into the late morning hours, and by the afternoon, probably looking at sunshine. So, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. We need all the rain we can get. I'm glad northwest Montana's gotten some pretty good rainfall, and then really areas east of the divide are going to be the big winners from this storm system. Probably picking up anywhere from a tenth to as much as a half an inch of rainfall. A few locations may if you get underneath one of those more embedded thunderstorms, maybe even picking up half an inch to 3/4 of an inch out there. So some very beneficial moisture is falling across the area. This is going to be good to help us out with our wildfire concerns. Unfortunately, for much of west central Montana, we missed out on a lot of the rainfall from this. So that's unfortunate, and then we're not going to get as much in the way of moisture for our mountains and such, but we'll take what we can get at this point. I feel like I do want to check one thing, and this is, I'm glad you brought up the rainfall, because I can look at what we've seen precipitation wise over the last, say, 48 hours, and even though most of it's only going to be in the last 24 hours, but kind of gives us a sense of what we've already seen. I'm looking specifically towards places like Glacier National Park. So you won't be able to see this, but I'll just kind of read some of these off if I can get it to load. There we go. So across the, I'll look at northwest Montana, Flathead Valley. Looks like in a lot of places anywhere from a tenth to maybe 1/4 of an inch of rainfall. Looks like just shy of 1/4 of an inch at Glacier Park International. Up into Glacier, so West Glacier, Apgar area, that is at 0.65 over the last 36 hours. Up near Hungry Horse, we're looking at about 1/3 of an inch. Let's see, getting back over towards the Libby Dam area, anywhere from 1/4 of an inch to nearly 3/4 of an inch of rainfall. 1/2 an inch near Libby itself. Troy, pretty similar on that. 1/2 an inch, or actually almost 2/3 of an inch there in Troy. Let's bring it back across into Glacier, some of those higher elevations. Yeah, looking at an inch to almost an inch and 2/3. Up into, again, those higher elevations of the national park. The east side has actually fared pretty well. St. Mary, 1.59 inches over the last 36 hours. Looking across into north central Montana, so getting down into Great Falls so far over this time period, anywhere from about 1/3 to 2/3 of an inch there at the Air Force Base, at least at the sensor there, 0.35, and at the airport on the west side of town, 0.61. So kind of gives you the sense there in Great Falls of the kind of rainfall. But those types of numbers, 1/3 of an inch to 2/3 of an inch, pretty common across north central Montana and northwestern Montana as well. Even St. Ignatius now picking up almost 1/2 an inch of rain, partially getting helped out by that one main band that's pushed through the area. So I think with that, I will wrap this up. Hopefully more of the region gets some rainfall later, southwest Montana specifically, but areas from Interstate 90, Missoula, down to Drummond, Butte, Hamilton, south from there, and even towards Dillon, I think we're going to miss out on the majority of it. So unfortunately, that's just sometimes the way that the cookie crumbles, but all the areas that are getting the rain, we'll take it all that we can. I saw that one last post from Minor Bird, or that last comment. I'm definitely worried about fire season. I'll say this. This is always one of my best pieces of advice. Don't be worried or don't be scared. Be prepared. Always have a fire plan in case something does arise. I think it's always best to have those preparations in advance before you need them. Hopefully you never need them, but as long as you're at least prepared with a plan in case a fire approaches your area, if you need to evacuate, things like that, or even if you're not necessarily in a majorly fire-prone area, how to contend with the smoke in the air. I know personally I struggle when we get a lot of wildfire smoke. It tends to get me like really plugged in the head. I get a little short of breath and things like that. So I have to sort of change how my plan is going to be, or at least how I go about my day because of the wildfire smoke. So even if you're not getting necessarily like direct impacts of the flames and the fire moving towards your area, things like that certainly are good to keep in mind as well. And always with fire season, and make sure to check on your neighbors, the elderly, make sure they have that they are prepared and as ready as they can be as well. Certainly just being a good steward and a good neighbor to those around us. So I think with that, again, I'm going to wrap it up. Have a great rest of your day. Have a safe day. I will see you all on the next one. And certainly for today, if you're dealing with the rain, stay dry, and warmer and drier days are ahead as we get into the end of the week and the weekends. So with that, I'll wrap it up. Have a great rest of your day. With NBC Montana, I'm meteorologist Mitchell Coombs.